Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, your creativity and spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before we get into this week's episode with Tammy Cox, firstly, I just want to share with you a couple of ways that I can support you. Join me and listen to the sister podcast, Her Inspirations. In these episodes, I explore with you the different aspects of our spiritual and creative journeys, and you're also able to join the mailing list to receive emails with additional teaching points and resources for you to explore on your personal journey. Also, save the date. On Wednesday, July the 14th of August is the second Creative Confidence Masterclass, during which you'll rediscover your creative abilities, explore spiritual practices to enhance your creativity, build a strong connection to your intuition, and learn how to integrate creativity into all aspects of your life, and join the burgeoning community. All of the links are in the show notes below. My guest this week is Coach Tammy Cox and creator of the Reclaim Your Marriage program. She works with professional women to help them save their marriage from divorce, even when their spouses are not on board. During our conversation, she shares about overcoming her own personal childhood traumas, feeling unlovable and unworthy, to now the personal transformation and releasing of limiting beliefs that has equipped her with the unique insights and strategies she uses today. Tammy also shares and talks about techniques such as mindfulness, self-compassion, and intentional communication, and the importance of self-awareness in identifying and breaking free from destructive patterns. So as always, I begin by asking my guest, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
I feel that when I'm doing something that's very exciting for me, like when I'm coaching my clients, I feel that excitement. I'm also very creative. So whenever I am raptured in my artwork, I feel that, whenever I'm like doing something I'm very passionate at.
So before we get into our conversation, Tammy, I just want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about your background, who you are, and what brought you to the work that you're doing today.
My name is Tammy Cox, and I help women save their marriage from divorce, whether or not their husbands are on board. And what got me into this work was I am the coach that I needed several years ago. So my husband and I, we were in a really bad place for a lot of years. First of all, fast forward or rewind back to my childhood. I had a very trauma-filled childhood. So I went through, a lot of abuse. I had an abusive father who was also very controlling and domineering. And then he ended up dying of AIDS when I was 11. And so the traumas kind of started stacking on top of each other. And I spent a lot of my teen years just very angry and bitter at the world and upset, and kind of some very low lows in there too. But when I hit, there was a few times in my life where I just hit really rock bottom. And once when I was 19, and I remember again when I became a wife and a mom, and all my triggers, you think, oh yeah, my horrendous childhood is behind me. Like, blue skies ahead, that's all gone. But it wasn't until I became a wife and a mom that all my triggers came up, and I just was not okay. And so it kind of led me on this journey of healing of like, I have to fix this because I cannot let the pattern that I was raised in, I can't let that leak onto my kids. I have to change the pattern. And so I tried everything. I tried books, seminars, religion. I tried, you name it. the retreats, counseling, therapy, everything. And it would help a little, but then things would kind of go back. And so I just reached this point with my husband where, you know, our marriage was at the end, and I was like, I just wasn't ready to let go. I knew there had to be a way. And that's really when I stumbled upon the inner child healing and the trauma work. And once I went through my own trauma healing, I was like, this is what I need to bring to the world. If I could do this for just one other woman, that would just be so satisfying. So that's really when I got into, that's when I decided this is what I want to do.
I want to talk more about that, or I want to allow you to talk more about that, because I think in recent, definitely within my generation of awareness, that there's been a real recognition of the fact that what happens in our childhood really impacts us as we move forward. And it's not just about dealing with what's happened in the present moment and how we're reacting to it. It has its roots in the unhealed and the unrecognized child. So what does that look like in terms of you having a conversation with your clients and really finding out what it is that that child is bringing to the present day adult relationship, and how to speak to the child to release that so that the adult is free to be free and create a new reality and a new way of being for the family going forward?
Yeah, I love that question. It's really identifying the beliefs. So it goes like this. In the first 5 years, our identity is almost completely formed. Some experts will go all the way up to 8, but I really think those first 5 years is the biggest impact. So what we have to do is we have to figure out what those beliefs are that are holy. So say you come to me and you're like, you know, my husband doesn't love me, this is happening, whatever. And we go, okay. We take it back. We go back to the childhood. We open up the identity, which is where all the beliefs are stored. So it goes, identity creates the beliefs create the thoughts create the emotions, and the emotions create the circumstances of our life. So we reverse engineer it. And because most therapies, we're dealing with the like surface level stuff. That doesn't work. We got to go all the way down to the root cause, and the root cause started early. So we got to identify the belief. So if it's around men, there's something called what we work with in my business is called the life command. So it's the negative beliefs that are pretty much dominating your story, your identity. So mine, to give you a little, for instance, was men hurt me and men aren't safe. So what kind of men do you think I attracted into my life with those beliefs? Right? So I had to first find the belief around them that was creating the results I was having. So this is what we do. We reverse engineer it. We go back to that little girl, and we do something called neutralizing the traumatic event. So a trauma, when you have a trauma, which is just a high state of negative emotion, right? You're just and what happens in that moment is you slap a belief on it. And that belief goes directly onto the subconscious mind, and it literally follows you throughout your life until you change it. So in those moments when I had these, abusive interactions with my dad, instead of thinking, oh, my dad's really trying to help me, he's doing exactly what he was taught, when he was young, or, I could have picked any belief to choose at that moment. But in that moment, I chose, I'm unlovable. And that was the command that really had the most power and still has the most power in my life. And then it resulted in all sorts of sabotaging behavior. But to identify the belief is really to notice when it comes up. Okay, so then you find it and you're like, where are all the places in my life that I made this true? And then you go back through your history and you're like, all these events, all these relationships, all these circumstances. And then you're like, That's when you're in the power seat, because now what do you do with it, right?
Mm. Right. And what is it about an adult relationship that activates that childhood, trigger? Like, what is it that brings it out?
Mm,
It's usually when people tend to notice, because there's if I'm recognizing a pattern, within myself and within when people talk about it, you have this childhood event, or those beliefs get embedded, and you can kind of, go through maybe like teens and 20s, and maybe you're acting out, you're acting out, and you're probably partying, and like you'll be doing something that is kind of considered like teenage and 20-year-old behavior that society kind of accepts somehow, like it's almost applauded and welcomed. And then once you get into that container of a relationship, then the mirror is probably like really right in your face, and then it all comes up. What is it about that container that makes that such an amplifier of those embedded beliefs and traumas? And and is it that we always choose you'd think, like, with having that survival instinct in us, that we'd know that if we think that men are unsafe and men are not to be trusted and all of those things, that we would then do the opposite of us as an animal instinct protection. But why do we not do that? I
mm.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So the first part of that being the reason why I believe that marriage is really like the amplifier of our beliefs is because you don't get more intimate than that. You share a house together, you share a bed together, you share a life together, you share finances, you do on and on and on, right? And so you don't get more intimate than that. And your marriage is like a mirror. It's all of our relationships are a mirror, but it is the one that is like the close-up mirror of like, here you are. And that's why I think it's the place where we get to look our most intimate relationship. So if you've never even allowed someone to have that intimate relationship with you, there's a reason why, right? And then within my marriage, I said, you can come this close, but no further, right? I had my walls up and so did he. We both lost our fathers when we were young. And so we had similar, we had opposite trauma responses, meaning what triggers my husband is when I get explosive. But when he gets withdrawn and pulls back from me emotionally, that's what triggers me. And then I go explosive. So I would go, then he would go. It was just like this vicious cycle. So the reason why we attract the people that we do in life is because of that trauma response. I'm not sure if this is the question you were asking, but we basically, with the law of attraction, it's that which is likened to itself is drawn. But if you are negative minded, you're literally calling those negative things to you. And that was me. I was so bitter. So I attracted from him all the things that triggered me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear that. And the question I was asking, like, wouldn't there be an element of us that has a survival instinct to stay away from that which we know would harm us, even though it doesn't happen? Like, why does
we
it
actually
not?
don't.
Yeah.
We actually don't. We have the ability. So we get, this is how we get programmed. Third trimester of pregnancy, boop, it's much like a computer. The computer is useless unless it has the system, right? So the chip gets programmed third trimester of pregnancy. Boop. That chip contains the beliefs of 7 generations back from both mom and dad's side. 95% of the beliefs that we hold did not originate from us. 95%. So if you think about it like this, if we don't tinker with that original program, so we get the first one in the third trimester, and then we're born, and then we absorb from our environment. So we're taking on the beliefs of the culture, of the family dynamics, of the religious structures. Then we go to school, we get those. We're just a product of our environment. We don't really have any say in our personality, really. Just don't. So unless we are informed of this, and unless, our parents are letting us know, hey, you have the ability to reject any of these beliefs, which we don't even have the ability to do till we're 8. 8 is when we have the faculties, the upper faculties, to be able to say, yeah, if someone calls us a name, we don't have to take it as truth. But before that age, we don't have that ability. So when people say, oh, you're this, you're that, you're the other, it goes, doop, gets downloaded into our hard drive. So we don't have a lot of say in who we are when we're young. Now, if we go through our healing process, and if we have great teachers around us that tell us, hey, you can rewrite your story at any point in time. Most of us don't have those teachers. So here we get to our 20s, 30s, whatever, and we're behaving like our mom, or we're behaving like our dad. We're a carbon copy of them. We didn't have any say in that, really. So we're taking on, and I even looked at this, because epigenetics, that's what I mean when I say we were pre-programmed. We take on, this is modern science. It's brand new, to where something called epigenetics, and it's wrapped around every strand of our DNA, and it's the beliefs that get passed down to us. And so those beliefs, many of them did not originate with me. So even the one where men are scary and men hurt me, I tested it. It's not only in my mom, but it's in my second daughter. I didn't test it in the other ones, but it's in her too. And she didn't have the kind of dad I had. She had a loving, gentle father, but she still inherited those beliefs from me. Like, we all get to have grace on ourselves, because our personality was not formed by us.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I'm kind of thinking of like the environment that I grew up with, and there was a lot of anger towards men. There was a lot of absenteeism of men, and for many different reasons. So like there was just like women everywhere, basically. So it was all women. I never grew up seeing a relationship function on a day-to-day basis, just the everyday machinations of Monday, Tuesday, when just people interacting on a daily basis. So it was this kind of like thing that didn't happen. And then there was just like this unspoken anger towards men. And one, because there were not relationships, but kids kept popping up, so imagine the brain fart that there was around that whole kind of thing. And my mom was the only one that actually got married, did the whole church thing, like she was part of the church anyway, and got married. But my dad died, so she had the anger because of grief, because he came and she was building it. They had all of these promises and plans. It wasn't even like they were buying property, they were moving, they were going to build this family and everything. And then the dreams went away. And then like her sisters, who chose not to get married and chose not really to have, who knows for what reason, any kind of long-term or any kind of relationship, yet still kept having children, so there was just this unspoken thing that just men aren't around. And they weren't really, and they only were around because they were given birth to. And then as a result of them being given birth to, they were elevated into this deity state, which then created this monster, and we can go down another path of that. Well, you can imagine what kind of mess that creates, and what kind of personality that creates when you've got men that are just kind of elevated because for existence, when and then they don't do any wrong. What kind of personality that creates. It creates a certain kind of toddler that just never is not a toddler.
It's a god walking among us.
Yeah. And you just, if you've been brought into the world believing that and no one's refuted that for you, then like you're never going to refute that.
Well, it's so important to know that the belief comes first. Once you know that, everything else makes sense, because you know, you're going to make things true for yourself. It's just like with me with those beliefs. Until I shifted them, those were the only kind of relationships I was attracted to, because that was my vibration. Like, we're all vibrational beings. Like, our thoughts are creative. You know, when we talk about being creative, your thoughts are creative. And if you knew how powerful they were, you would not just think them all willy-nilly and just let in whatever dumb thing you don't want to come in, and you latch onto it as a belief. Because if someone else has that thing that you want, then it's obviously been proven it's not impossible to have, right? So why don't you have it? Because you got a belief that's blocking it. So we're just very, very good creators. Most of us just don't know that we're doing it.
Yeah. And it was something that really popped up for me when, after a while, I'm like, why do I keep doing this? Creating these like ghosts, you know, there's someone there, but they're not there, you know, and after a while, I'm like, I have to stop creating these men that are present but invisible, because that was just the reality. Like I said, I'd had these,
but that was, that's what you
experienced, but invisible men, you know, that were there, but
it makes
actually
so
were not
much
there.
sense though, right?
Yeah.
It's the pattern, it's the family lineage, and that goes on so many generations before you. That's why I mean, when I say like it really wasn't your fault, you know. However, once you have the awareness that, you know, you do get a say, that's when it becomes, I don't want to say your fault, because I don't believe in like handing out fault. That's like judgment. But I believe that's our responsibility to create anew. Okay, I figured out that I've done this thing that I don't really like, so I get to change it. Period. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's simple.
It's simple. It's not easy. But then it becomes a very empowered position to take, I find anyway, you know, because it's like, oh, I see a pattern now.
Because you're not the victim.
Yeah, right. Because before it was like, these men are no good, this kind of thing. I'm like, are they really? I mean, like, you know, like, okay, in our vicinity, we're just like seeing like nobody. I can't think of anything that's like functioning in a way that you'd be like, they look like they're getting on well. You know, there's either there's like a dysfunction, there's like constant argument, or there's like just clear, like, you know, cohabiting for convenience, you know, just that kind of thing. You can feel it. So you're never around anything that's inspiring.
Healthy.
Yeah. Because I'm just like, this, it might look okay, but I can feel that is not, you know, you feel something, and you know what it's like to be around people when you feel that, oh, they've got real connection, they've got good communication, you know. Because one of the things that I remember doing when I was younger and left home and started to like go out in the world and try and figure the world out, to try and like do something different on all levels, was I'd just watch people all the time. I'm like, how are they doing this? You know, and I'd kind of infiltrate into people's like families and like watch the dynamics. I'd never seen stuff like that before, especially the ones that were set up in the right way, you know, the parents and the kids and everything, and just really observe what happens. Like, is this okay? And then of course, invariably, you kind of see that like not all that glitters is gold, you know, and just really try and work things out. But I did a lot of like watching and modeling and patterning and trying to work it out, because I hadn't been around anything like that ever. It just all happened out in the world or on telly, you know, or on books or in films. It just didn't happen here in like, there was
in your world.
Not at all. Like, and for a few cousins who had chosen to get married, like one by one, they just like disintegrated on the other side of it, you know, almost like dominoes. You know, they kind of all got married, and then 5 years later, they kind of all disintegrated. All disintegrated. And I knew that as well, that one of the things that I just didn't want to do is I didn't want to be a single parent. I just like flat out didn't want to do that. And, you know, my mom was a single parent out of circumstance. She didn't go into it wanting to just have kids on her own.
Right.
So that was a like very strong decision that I had. One, because I was chasing a career where it wasn't the right time to have children, but also I always knew that I was never going to do it on my own, because one, it's not fair on the parents, not fair on the child. It's not, I don't think I know people enter into it on their own, but having been part of that, I just don't think it's a fair dynamic on either. And it puts an unnecessary, responsibility on a child that should be having a childhood. Because you just take on the responsibility of things, like you want things to remain the same, and you, like you say, a child will kind of take things on and make it be their fault, or make themselves be responsible for things that they can't be responsible for.
Well, the thing is none of us are getting out of this physical experience without trauma. And trauma is actually, I urge my clients to think of trauma as a really good thing, because it's designed to protect us, right? If you saw a snake and that snake bit you, your subconscious mind is going to say, oop, we're not doing that. The problem is the distortion. So then you see a stick and you're like, oh, right? It's just a stick. It's not a snake, but it's really not a bad thing. Trauma is not a bad thing. It's designed to help. We just have to learn how to use it to help us. Meaning, if we come to the awareness that we now know that our beliefs are creating our experience, then we get to tweak them. It's not like you're destined to stay where you're at. But we also don't get to take the passenger role and just be like, we can't go cruise control, because cruise control goes to the subconscious mind, and that's the old programming. So we have to stay really conscious and really aware and really present. And when we do that, life gets to be really fun, because we're learning to create it on purpose. So like, trauma doesn't have to be a big, horrible word. I know everyone demonized that word, but it's like, it's not a bad word, guys. I promise it's really, really good. You just got to learn how to mess with it.
Yeah. And I suppose you can call trauma those events that like you have a clear memory of, because there are so many seconds of days that we've been through in our lives, but they're only like pivotal moments that kind of pop out as something, so those are the ones.
But the subconscious, every time you go back to a memory, the subconscious never remembers it the same. So it can go more negative. It can turn into more negative every time you go back, or it could go more positive. It rarely does do that on its own, but you never remember the event the exact same. What you do remember is the emotions that you trap in your body. And that's what we release, in my work, that's what I release for them, is the trapped emotions stored in their body. That's what we get rid of. So basically they can go back to the event, but it's completely neutral, because we took the emotional charge out of it. So you can go back and watch the event, but you don't feel anything in your body because we took that out.
I want to ask also about when you make the decision to heal, when you make the decision to change, and others don't.
Yeah.
And, some welcome it, some want it, but then some, especially when you start to rise out of, the misery loves company sofa that everyone sits on and moans about all the bad stuff that's gone on, and, chew over it again and again, and your partner's in your pain and everything. But then when you start to move out and go, I don't want to do this anymore, I want something different, and how others feel abandoned by you choosing to move on and try and create something different for yourself. Why is it? I mean, maybe I know, but I want to hear it from you, that those that choose not to heal then feel so bad for, don't want you to heal, or react so badly to seeing you move out of the pain and actually seeing something new in your life. Why does it impact them so badly? Why can they not be pleased for you, or even inspired that there is a way out of the pain that everyone feels?
Well, they're holding up a mirror to you saying, basically, it makes them feel horrible to see you so happy. Misery loves company because they're a vibrational match. That's why, my clients go through this. When they start to raise their vibration and they become an emotional snob, they can't listen to what they used to listen to. They can't watch the same stuff. They can't be in the same conversations as they used to. Why? Because they care about the way they feel. Why? Because their emotional state is creating their results. Beliefs, thoughts, emotions, results. So when they know, they just can't hang. It's basically, they can't love someone else more than they love themselves. So they have to cut the codependency strings and say, hey, listen, I love you, but the best thing I can do for you is give you an example of what's available for you. And if it's so gross for you to watch, then you're just not ready for it. And that's okay. I'm okay regardless as if you choose this or not. For me, I had to make boundaries because I cannot listen to someone just complain to me. I can't do that. They know. And if they have some sort of belief about me abandoning them, that's just their own belief system. But I know that the only way that I could be, so my kids were the hardest for me, right? But I would tell them, until I fill my cup up, I have nothing good to offer you. So give me my 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to fill my cup up. I'm going to get all juiced up on my source, and then we can come play. But until I've done that, I am of no value to you because I'm in a terrible mood. And it's really it's really a gift to them as well, because I guard my boundaries. I guard my emotions so radically. And that's teaching them that they get to do the same thing for themselves. That's a gift that I get. But if I don't correct that in my own head, I could totally see how someone could feel that way. But you have to get really selfish. And I use these words, the little quotes, because I believe that selfishness is really, really good, but not in the way that other people are defining it.
The name, yeah.
Yeah. The definition for me is to be so full of yourself. And to be so full of yourself is to be so full of your source. That's the spiritual aspect of yourself. So yeah, we got to get juiced up on that. And then I have something to give to you. But if my cup is empty, I'm not going to offer you anything good for you. So that's how I define that for my clients. But yeah, it's a tough part of the journey, because there is a time where people get scarce in your reality because you've shifted out of the old one, but you're not quite integrated into the new one. So you're in that
limbo.
You're in that empty space, and it can feel lonely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it can. And then you get used to that peace. I mean, if I talk about my own moments of having that, where is everybody? Like, where is everybody? But then getting used to,
they're down there.
but finding like a real, like, this is what it's like when things aren't going off all the time. It's like, oh, this is okay. And then it becomes like a few days and a few weeks and then months. And then you're like, oh, do people live like this? In this kind of level of like things not being wrong all the time, or you not being wrong all the time, or just, in a different way. And that was, it took me years. I was in my 40s before I got to the time of having like stretches of time where there just was no stress going on, where I would just be like,
do you know most people, Carol, don't even know what that feels like?
It took me a long time. Like, I had to step away. A few people needed to die. Like, not
people needed to die. Yes,
but unfortunately, that like sometimes like people are so caught in their own situation.
Well, because you were trained. You were trained to put other people ahead of yourself. You were trained to put yourself last. You were trained to exalt these people and to do what they wanted you to do. And over time, you forget what you want. You were trained to do that. And so then you have to train yourself the opposite way. So I'm just so happy that you got to the place where you felt that because, I can work with people a long time and they still don't get to that place where they know what peace feels like. That's peace.
Yeah, yeah.
To tune off all the other sounds and to have complete silence.
Mm.
People
It
don't know
took a
that.
long time, until, and I'd say this would be only like a couple of years ago, that then I'd be like, there'd be times I'd be walking down the road and going, God, just a realization that things had been all right for a few months without any kind of, nothing was amazing, but nothing was like as it used to be. There wasn't this constant like stuff going on and trying to like go away and come back and then spending weeks trying to like reset myself and then waiting for the next go in, and just this like there was this just constant going in of going round and round
Yeah.
and round and round. I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. Because, and then also knowing that, and also seeing the effects of unchecked, unhealed trauma and what that would mean as as I got older, that would have been the trajectory, because I'd seen it, because this level of awareness, this level of healing is not the norm.
Mm-hmm.
No, so this kind of work that I'm taking on
I
may,
hope it is.
well, it was, I hope it is now, but going for ahead of myself, and looking at the generations before this was not stuff that we did. It was like that you just retold the stories time and time again until you died. And I could see, like you're saying, like every time you retell the story, the emotion came up, how in retelling their own version of different events, of different things, you could just be, everyone's having a nice time, and then it's like the story comes back and like, okay, here we go again. The ones that you've heard over and over, but there's this kind of loop of retelling, because it just seems like to be the only time to get any emotion, because like no one was ever going to joy, so the only time to feel something was just the retelling of some stuff, that at least it was a different emotional state, even though it wasn't joy. It was like, we're talking about the emotional scale, it's like at least you're not like, anger's a little bit better than nothing. It kind of gets you off.
Yeah.
It gets you off the bottom.
Yeah. Anger can launch you up. Like it has that ability to launch you up, but most people don't, because then they get pressured to go down, because people don't like the feeling of their anger. But it's like, if you just kept going up, you'd hit some higher things. But you're right. If someone has not accustomed themselves to joy, a lot of times it's very uncomfortable for them. They have that feeling of like, oh wait, I haven't worried about anything in a long time. Like, what can I find to worry about? It's like they have that because that was their training, that was their programming, and so it's such a huge thing when just one person chooses to heal, and then they start telling that story. I can understand how you probably, if you would go back to some of your family reunions, maybe your story wouldn't be the popular story, or would it?
Right now, I don't know, because I'm off like selfishly doing things and not doing the stuff that I shoulda, woulda done, because it was the shouldas that kept me in this kind of guilt sphere for the majority of my life, of like, you should be here, you should be doing this, you should be looking after, you should. And it's like, but I want to try and live my life, because I think I'll be able to help you out better if I go and make something of myself in the world, instead of just staying here where everyone's just going around in circles and, just like feeding off each other and not going anywhere. And there seemed to be, I remember there was one time, there's a conversation with me and a couple of other family members who, their names don't need to be released, but we were all playing this game of like trauma trumps, where it was like, you know what I mean? It's
Who
like,
had it worse? Yeah.
Yeah, it was that. And I could hear each of us going, well, I'm going through that. Well, I'm going through. Actually, I'm going. And it was just like, we were all trying to outdo each other with how bad we had it at that moment in time. And like, I don't know why I snapped out of it, but I was just like, what are we doing? And it wasn't like anything that I mentioned it out loud, because it wasn't that wasn't the conversation, but I just heard myself playing this game. And it was like, why is it the only conversation that I can have when I go back to the family unit is to kind of point out all the things that aren't working for me? Because that's the, it's the conversation that can be had. Or people only feel that they can reach me if I'm unwell, because they're like, oh, I can help you with your sickness or anything like that. So I would like do anything not to be sick, because I'm like, try and talk to me as a well person, try and talk to me as someone who's trying to make something happen. And I'm having to go completely against the grain of all of this guilt and lack of self-belief that I have, because I'm like going against all the stuff that's pulling me back. And it's not just other people's lack of belief in what I was doing, it's my kind of hearing them still telling me this story. And like the final release, or what felt like a real release for me, came one time when I was just in another group doing a meditation, and I was just looking at things. I'm like, I'm putting so much work into things that I'm doing, but there seems to be something that is still, I'm not launching, considering the amount of work that I'm doing. It's like, why am I not letting go? Like, what is it? What is the thing? And what came back for me was like, even though you're not around your family anymore, there's part of you that still maintains the connection by maintaining their beliefs. So even though I'm not there hearing all the things that can't happen for me, by keeping that belief alive, I'm keeping them present. And that was just, it was almost like oh, what? No. And it was like, I have to release even the beliefs that I aligned with, just to keep them around, keep someone's presence by keeping their belief, even though you're not keeping their presence with you. And that was a big release for me as well, that sometimes you just still maintain the voices in your head to maintain the relationship, even though you've physically kind of stepped away from it. Because I was like, it's not working. Keeping myself in this limbo is frustrating me, because I'm not there.
Well, I think that our family of origin can be like, for me, I moved away from, I was born and raised in San Diego, California, and we moved away over to Arizona like 3.5 years ago. And it's been pivotal for my healing journey, because just the distance alone gives me enough space to be able to connect with me. Because I'm not you. Yes, I came from that family, but I'm not you, right? You aren't your family, but it's like, I felt like that was part of like one of the knobs that I need to be turned down. I needed to turn off the noise in order to hear myself, hear what was coming through from the inside. And it's like, whatever we need on our journey is supplied. I think, Carol, I think the reason why you've gone through your healing process is because you followed your own calling, your own creative calling. Because when you're in that flow and when you're doing the things that light you up and you're passionate about, it can't not take you down the road. Like, it just naturally takes us down the road. What most people do is they never listen to their inner callings, and their life is filled with the things they don't really like. So I believe that that's the reason why you're where you're at today in your healing journey, is because you started following that inner calling, and you have been, even though you do have the judgments that you're carrying from those other people, even though you have those and they might be slowing you down a little bit, you're still being led by that passion. And that's awesome. I love that you found that, and you're on some level letting yourself go with the flow.
And that, the creativity, which is why I'm so passionate about creativity and spirituality, because I saw how much of a sanctuary it was for me, even when I was still, too young to kind of go out into the world, going into that space of creativity, going into that piece of tuning in with myself and finding and listening to that voice, and really aligning to knowing what my intuition sounded like. That I could like follow it, and even though I was walking with, like something around my ankle,
a little bit of anchorage. Yeah.
So, I was still moving forward, but it was still, it's still dragging me. And then there came a point where the tension was too much. And it was that part where I'm like, what is that? What is that bit that's just holding me connected? And it's really not going to help. It's not going to help me move forward. And it's not going to help anyone who may have in mind or maybe trying to figure out, is it possible to get out of this loop that we're all in? Because there is like a loop. And the part that I don't know if there's no one really alive to really tell the story, is there was something that happened back in the day, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. No one really ever spoke about it, but it was something that was a core wounding that happened to my mom and her sisters back in the day, because there was something that just wouldn't leave them. No, and no one ever spoke about it. But even though their lives, took different paths, but then they all ended very similarly, in that there was this kind of despondency, there was this defeat, there was this sadness that overcame them as women as they got older. That was really sad, because they had so much power in them, and yet the power inverted in on them and then affected their minds and affected their outlook, and kind of made them hardened in the world. No, and looking at the women, the young women that they were when they first came to this country, and they used to dress up and go and get their pictures taken all the time, and then just seeing how life really took that away from them, or whatever it was that was anchoring them, took that spark of optimism away from them, that they just ended up alone and really and like heartbroken in a way for their lives. That I was very also keen to change the story around that. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it.
But that's the thing. It's like we could all look around at the things that are sad, because we all have the power, right? We all have the power. And what do we do with it? Like, because I was raised in religion, and I studied the Bible like almost my whole adult life. And in the New Testament, it talks about how we are all given gifts, and what each person, it gave the examples of what each person did with their gift. One buried it in the ground. The other went and multiplied it. And the other one, like, we all get these gifts, right? Here they are. We got them. What are we going to do with them? Are we going to go out and share them? Are we going to multiply them? Are we going to hide them away? Are we going to forget about them? Like, what are we going to do with the gifts? Because we all have them. I think, like, for a person who just chooses misery over just being happy, it's like, okay, it's neither good nor bad to me, because I think it's all examples of like what is available to us. Okay, I could go this route, be really miserable. Cool. I could go this route, be super happy. Again, I think here, it is a simple decision. And then what comes after gets to be just the momentum from that decision, but it is a decision. And at one point, they all decided to go that route. And it's like, it's neither good nor bad. That's just what they chose to do with their gifts.
Mm-mm-mm.
And I think it's a gift to you, because you got to see it and you said, yeah, I don't think I'll do that. I think I'm just going to go ahead and recreate my whole story. We all have the ability to do that. Why wouldn't you? Choose something that's exciting for you. Like, you have all these things you're passionate about. Why would you just go and focus on the few things that you may not like all that much?
And like you said, it is a choice, but it's interesting to see, and again, witness it with another kind of generation, just how the choice is being made, and what it looks like, and especially like I said, especially as you move into those riper years, they really embed two people in my life really choosing very different paths. And how year on year it's solidifying into a hardness and a bitterness that is then infusing out into repelling people from wanting to be around them. Like you just like, okay, I'm just gonna like prod it to make sure she's still breathing, and just, you know, and then yeah,
Run
and it's like,
away.
okay, you're still all right. Where, and then someone else, you could spend forever with them, just like listening to them because they've opened their hearts. And it's a real testament to doing the work. And sometimes like doing the work isn't maybe as clear cut as we're making it out. You know, it's not named like that. But I've seen, you know, how there are some people who just, as they age, they ripen, they just open up, and they've just got this kind of feeling of like love, and you want to be around them. And I'm like, what is it that they're doing? Because I like what they're leaving in the world, and the fact that people just are drawn to them. And then what makes it with someone that even if their name flashes up on the phone, you know, it like, you're just like, you turn the phone over, you're like, you know, that kind of like, to have that kind of effect on someone. But it just kind of highlights the importance really of going back and recognizing the wound of that child, and answering.
It's always going to be in there. She'll never leave. In fact, I had a session today, and it was like, we just literally go back. Where is she? What's she going through? I want you to pick her up. I want you to hold her, talk to her. What does she need from you? Like literally give her what she needs. And then she calmed down all the way down. And it's like, it's so easy. It could be in seconds, you know, just in your imagination, but every age you've ever been is still within you. So when I get triggered, I know it's probably my 4 or 5-year-old self just really scared. And it's just a matter of picking her up, you know, being with her, listening to her, hearing her, and she's immediately calm.
Tell me about other aspects of your work. How are you expanding what you do?
Gosh, I'm always expanding what I do. A big one that I'm looking to incorporate in the future is really, because I work with just the wives, and a lot of times they're on this healing journey and making huge strides and big impact, and their husbands are like, I want that too, but I don't really work with men. So I'd love to create one specifically for men. I feel like a man who can speak to men would be ideal. My husband, I've been wanting to pull him in, but he's like, he doesn't really want to be the in front of the camera guy. He likes to be the behind the scenes guy. And so I would love to, you know, create that partnership so that, you know, men have this too, because men are starting to do their healing journey. They're, you know, it's starting to pick up momentum, and I just love that. But I'd love to create that within my program for sure. That's the next step for me.
I think you know, and it's good that that's there, and that it doesn't seem like a lost cause, you know, because I think there was a period of time where like, okay, that's my lot, there it is, you know, this is what we have, you know, and that's all there is. And I was, you know, talking back myself again. I'm like, it can't be. Like, I don't want that. Just, I don't want it to be like that.
Could I give you some homework?
Go on then, please. I love homework.
Okay, so I have other so that's another part of my expansion, is that I have you know, for my single friends, they've come to me and they're like, I want what you have. Teach me how to have this. And I'm like, it's the same work. It's the same exact work. There's tweaks, right? But it all goes back to the beliefs. And so I've really wanted to expand it for like single women wanting to attract like their divine mate. And because that's what I did. I married the same guy. The majority of our marriage, he was not what I wanted. But then when I had my healing process, he transformed too. And then he was the man of my dream. Now he's the man of my dreams, but it didn't start that way. So, oh gosh, did I lose my thought?
Single women.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Single women.
Yeah.
So I tell them this, I'm like, you got to get so clear on what you want him to be. You've been so focused on your belief that it can't happen for you, whatever the beliefs are, it can't happen for you, it doesn't exist, whatever it is. You got to get clear on what you want him to be. So he's out there, he's absolutely real, and he will absolutely show up when you believe that it can and is happening. So make a list of all those attributes you want him to have, all the things you'll do. Get so obsessed with picturing your life together. And it feels like fantasy at first, but it always does.
I was having this very same conversation with my friend yesterday because we went off to we went off to the coast, you know, in our cold English where you would have died. We're like, let's take the train down and go down to the coast as well. And it was nice to kind of sit by the sea and hear the sea, but the clouds were over and, you know, it was overcast and there was like a little bit of rain. So you would have hated it. But we, you know, we were like, oh, like, and we were doing it prior to all the schools emptying out. So, you know, if we didn't go then, in a couple of weeks, it's just going to be ridden with holiday and everything like that. So, but it was that, and we were talking about things like that, and I was saying, you know, I'm getting really clear on the things that I want. It's like, one, he needs to look after himself, because I'm of the age now that I don't want to go out with a younger guy. I want to go out with somebody who's round about my age, because one, it's really important that we have similar cultural references, because I always like to talk about like old TV ads or old school programs, or like, you know, songs that used to play on the radio, or just like stuff like that. And it's really important that I can joke and have things, or play a song from like when we used to rave in the 90s that someone will you know, so that I can talk about stuff like that. And yeah, all the deep and meaningful, that's really important, but it's important.
That's so interesting that that's what came up for you.
Yeah, because I'm just like,
important.
Because yeah, you want to have the romance and the fun, but I also just like joking and playing around and reminiscing about the 80s and the 90s and, you know, pre-internet days and stuff like that. I know some of like my friends are like, oh, I like younger guys. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I don't know, you know, I don't want to, because what did she mention? She was talking about doing a breathwork class. And then she was kind of referencing When Harry Met Sally, that scene from the film. And she said it, and she's like, nobody knew what she was talking about. The whole reference just flew over their heads. And I'm like, you know, well, how old are they in there that they didn't even get that? And I'm like, it's really important for me to be able to kind of just talk about general everyday stuff, you know, as well as the always got to be all these kind of things and spiritually minded and all that, but then just on a basic level to be able to know what I'm talking about. So to be around about my age, but also, like I was saying, when it comes to people my age now, is like, you need to be looking after your health, because we can't get away with the mess that we got away with when we were in our 20s and 30s, because the body just repels it now. And I'd sooner not have a casualty on my hands. You know what I mean? It's important. You know, like I'd like someone to be vital.
Well, I hate to break it to you, sweetie, but we're all going to be leaving these particular meats.
Well, I know, but you know, at least to have like a good,
keep them around for a while.
A good 10 to 15 years of like relative health. Like that's not too much to ask, is it?
I don't know. It's up to you, but I think that you should ask it. I think you should get a list and you should start adding to it every day and visualizing what that life would look like. How would it feel? Like what, because too, sometimes we think we would like something and then we get it and we don't really like it. But a lot of times I'll have them just take things from like relationships in the past. Oh, I like how this guy opened my door, and I really liked this guy, you know, whatever. You just pull all the pieces from all those people and you can form a list and add to it all the time, but feel it too. Like feel it, because that's the reason why you want it, is because of the way you believe you'll feel in the having of it. So feel it.
Will do. Because it's time. I'm ready for that now as well. Thank you so much, Tammy, for the conversation and the fun and the laughter and the sharing. I really appreciate what you've done and what you've brought to her conversations. And can you just let everyone know how to reach out to you if there's something that you're offering as well, please?
Yeah.
Let us know all about
So for the women out there who are struggling in their marriage, I do have a mini course that I'd love to gift you. Actually, I'll give it directly to you if you want me to include it in here, but I'm also on all the platforms. I give a lot of information via Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook group where I keep people updated on my upcoming workshops. I have one coming up next month. But yeah, I'd love to gift you with my mini course where you can, dive into a couple of my videos on, how to save your marriage. So yeah, and I've so enjoyed this interaction with you, Carol. You are a delight.
So are you. Thank you. It's fun. It's reciprocated. So, it's been great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tammy, so much for joining me on this episode, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and her conversations, please leave a review and also share this episode with anyone that you feel will benefit from the wisdom of my guest. If you want to find out more about me, you can go to my website, carolmaywhittick.com, CarolmaeWhittick.com. I'm on Instagram, Kazmic, CAZMICK, and on Facebook and on LinkedIn, Carol May Whittick. Until the next episode, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.